In today's news, a visiting UK health ambassador says that UK residents do not have a choice in which vaccines to take, also adding that the BVI has the AstraZeneca brand because there are no direct flights to accommodate the fragility of other brands.
And ministerial political advisors will not cost taxpayers additional money, and a $1 million figure expressed by the opposition leader said to be misleading, according to the Premier Andrew Fahie.
As a result of the recent surge, we do know that many businesses are closed. Now, BVI CCHA is now in conversation with policy makers as it relates to compensation.
And nearly 50% of BVI CCH member businesses who participated in a recent survey are in favor of requiring employee vaccination.
On a lighter note, Kishma Penn commended for providing daily meals to the COVID ward nurses. We have that and so much more on today's edition of 284 News.
The wait is over. CCT Fire is here. Experience ultra-fast downloads, seamless streaming, and even more reliable connectivity on an all-new fire-blazing super-fast CCT Fiber network. CCT Fire. Bring it home and upgrade today.
Welcome everyone. It's Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. I'm Kamal Haynes.
And my name is Javon Wilson. A terrific Tuesday indeed here in Tortola BVI. We are coming to you live out of 284 News. Now, viewers, we're going to dive straight into our newscast for today. Now, as the vaccination push continues in the territory, we also see the critics continuously questioning the makeup of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, today, during an exclusive interview with 284 Media, UK Health Care Ambassador to the overseas territories, Professor Ian Cumming broke down the difference between the vaccines, but also spoke to why only the AstraZeneca brand is being supplied to the BVI by way of the UK. Listen in. Is there any intention for the UK to consider the mRNA vaccines? And why was this particular approach used as it relates to this vaccine, as opposed to maybe using a more dormant or a lesser potent form of the virus, as was the standard before?
So there are several different vaccines available, and basically there's two different technologies that are being used. The first of those is the vector, which is the vaccine that's currently being used here in the BVI, the AstraZeneca vaccine, where a different virus that's been inactivated is used to carry a small part of the COVID, the virus that causes COVID, into the human body. The human body recognizes that as being foreign and fights against it, develops antibodies to it, which is what gives you the immunity. The RNA vaccines, which is the Pfizer vaccine, work slightly differently in that they encourage your body to produce a piece of protein that the body recognizes as foreign, and that piece of protein looks very similar to part of the virus that causes COVID, and again your body develops antibodies to that. So the tried and tested technology is the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is the one that you have here. In terms of why that one is here, it comes down to what we can get where. So the Pfizer vaccine is very fragile and it has to be stored at -70 degrees. And at the moment, we're only able to send the Pfizer vaccine to those territories where there is a direct flight from London Heathrow, and where we can protect that cold chain, and also where we can make sure that it doesn't get jolted around and bashed and vibrated. Because if you do that to the Pfizer vaccine, it inactivates it. All the overseas territories that haven't got access to a direct flight from London Heathrow, so Anguilla, Montserrat, British Virgin Islands, St. Helena, Falklands, for example, we've sent the AstraZeneca vaccine to, because the AstraZeneca vaccine is stored at fridge temperature, normal fridge temperature, and it's far less fragile than the AstraZeneca vaccine. So it's very much been in terms of logistics, but I think it is important.
Now, viewers, Professor Cumming also mentioned that the UK residents do not have a choice when it comes to taking the vaccine. When they show up, it's based on whatever vaccines are available at that time. Listen in.
Important to stress that back home in the United Kingdom, people don't get a choice over which vaccine they have. So we are trying to give the Pfizer vaccine to people under 40, but apart from that, if you're over 40, you have whichever vaccine is available when you turn up for your vaccination appointment. People can't say, well, I want the Pfizer, or I want the AstraZeneca, or I want the Moderna. It's whatever vaccine we happen to be using on that particular day. these are all really good vaccines. These have all been through a very thorough accreditation process and been approved by several regulatory bodies around the world. And the World Health Organization's guidance is, if there is only one vaccine available in a particular area, take that one vaccine.
It was quite an extensive and very informative interview. Again, if you want to watch that in full, you can visit our 284 media page.
And now we head to news involving the latest decision by government to implement some ministerial political advisors. Well, Premier Andrew Fahie, while linking some of the misfortunes from past government as part of the reason for having ministerial political advisors, said the initiative will not cost the taxpayers any additional money and will not amount to the $1 million figure as suggested by the opposition leader. Well, Premier Fahie made a statement during a lengthy speech on Monday, July 26, as he responded to the controversial topic, which has so far resulted in public backlash. Well, the Premier said that the role of the ministerial political advisors will not create any new expense for either government or taxpayers, as these funds are ordinarily budgeted for by government's consultants. Well, he said that if the advisors were to be fully utilized by all eligible persons, the figures would not surpass $867,000, a figure which he said is far less than the $1 million figure purported by the leader of the opposition, Kishma Penn. Take a listen.
As I've already stated, this role does not create any new expense for the government or taxpayers, because we are simply putting structures to an existing practice and utilizing the funds already allocated to the ministries for engaging consultants. But further to this, the amount that will be paid in remuneration is not the $1.35 million that the opposition is throwing around. Cabinet approved a maximum of 3 advisors to the Premier and a maximum of 1 for all other ministers and junior ministers. The Premier or any of the ministers are not obligated to utilize this post or the maximum allowed. The remuneration are in 2 bands. 1, for the public advisor to the Premier, the remuneration range is between $79,440 and $120,000 per annum. And 2, for the advisor to the other ministers and junior ministers, the remuneration range is $60,408 to $84,408 per annum. So if the Premier and the ministers and junior ministers engage the maximum allowed number of advisors, the total amount to be paid across all ministers will be between $600,768 on the low side to no more than $866,448. These are the facts.
Well, Premier Fahie also assured residents that the political advisors will only be compensated for their assigned contracted work and will not be receiving any hidden or additional fees.
There's nothing else to add to this figure because the advisors are not entitled to any other benefits. The advisors are not entitled to vacation leave, sick leave, overtime, gratuity, phone allowance, traveling allowance, vehicle allowance, meal allowance, or any other benefits. So clearly we are not near the base total of $1.08 million that the opposition is peddling, and definitely a long way from the $1.35 million they are throwing around, which they have inflated with false and sensational assumptions about non-existent benefits. I must say that the modus operandi of this opposition, as they always do when they spew sensitization information, is to say they do not have access to the information. Well, the responsible thing to do before making statements is to first get the correct information. And there are legitimate avenues for the opposition to get accurate information.
But although the BVI has used the United Kingdom's model as a guide to implement this new initiative, the Premier said there are several distinctions that have been made when it comes to the BVI's model.
As I said, the UK model has been used as a guide for the terms of reference, but there are certain features that occur in the UK system that we have chosen not to adopt for the BVI. In the UK system, the ministerial advisor also works at a political level in the minister's constituency and works closely with the minister's political party. The UK advisor can even function as a lobbyist of sorts between persons and supporters in the party and the UK government. I can assure you that from the inception, the Premier's office has been clear that the advisor will not be working with or alongside any political party or engage in any lobbying as is done in the UK. We have put this into the terms and conditions of the contract. The advisor's role in the BVI is strictly research, policy analyst, and to assist the minister with certain aspects of communication, messaging, among other areas. In the UK system, the advisor can instruct or override public officers, but in the BVI stream, the advisor cannot instruct nor override public officers. The advisor will conduct research and policy analysis and deliver advice to the minister on whatever subject the minister instructs. Where it is necessary for the advisor to interface with the public service, this will be done through the Permanent Secretary, as recommended by the Deputy Governor's Office. It is also important to note that the advisor is not going to be duplicating the job of any public officer. Under the public service regulations, public officers are prevented from considering certain factors when analyzing research and designing policy. But those factors are part of the real world operating environment. And that is why we sometimes have a disconnect between what the public officer is able to do and what the minister and the government is trying to achieve for the people based on the mandate given by the people.
Viewers, as you heard the Premier stating that the advisor will not be working with or alongside any political party or engage in any lobbying as is done in the UK. They cannot instruct nor override public officers, and the advisor will not be duplicating the job of any public officer. Interesting, Jovan, considering obviously when he made that statement, obviously announcing this decision, there was a lot of backlash, not only from the members of the public, but also from the opposition leader, which this statement seems to be a direct response to.
And it absolutely is, but viewers, we are out of time for that story. But still ahead of the break, BVI CCHA is in conversation with policymakers for possible compensation as it relates to closed businesses. And nearly 50% of BVI CCHA member businesses who would, of course, participated in a recent survey are now in favor of requiring employee vaccination. We have the details for that and so much more right after this commercial break.
Is business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media@cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, the chairman of BVI CCHA, Shana Smith Archer, within an exclusive interview with us earlier today, said that the board is now in full support of getting residents vaccinated, particularly employees, against the COVID-19 virus. Listen in. The push now seems to be a bit more aggressive as it relates to getting persons vaccinated. So I have to ask this. BVI CCHA as a body, of course, that is in representation of the corporate community, is BVI CCHA in full support of getting the territory vaccinated?
Oh, definitely. It's something where, again, it's necessary, or one of those decisions that's out there, that in addition to your protocols, the vaccine is now available to us. And, it is still not mandatory, because the government, even though, they're saying, hey, you really, 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 really need to think about doing this, it is something that is still an individual choice. And I think that's where the tension started. Because, again, it's like, you have the choice to do it, but then it's still not requiring you to do it. So then you're deciding on your own, well, for whatever reasons, because for some people, they're not going to be able to take it, right? So we know that if there's a goal that's set, we know there's a percentage, whether it's because of age, the younger population, or it's because of medical conditions, persons may decide that they don't want to take the vaccine. But for those that are able to and can, there's the additional risk in terms of looking at your place of employment. and what it means there. So, there are some employers that are already, they've already issued the change in their policies as far as it relates to vaccination and what they're requiring for their workplaces. Others, again, depending on what industry they're in, they may decide it's not a requirement, but it is definitely something that they are in favor of, again, from a health risk standpoint. And it's really, everything is boiling down to risk management. So,
Viewers, as we also know, following the recent surge, certain businesses were forced to close their doors, many of whom are calling for some form of supplemental support from government. Now, Mrs. Archer Smith mentioned that BVI CCHA is in conversation with policymakers on this. Listening. Back a bit, we just made mention of the constraints businesses are facing, even closed or operating under reduced hours. With what's happening, they still have bills to pay, mortgages still have to be paid, and so many other bills. And recently, again, we saw businesses like salons, gyms, bars being closed. Those are more than likely the businesses to close first once there's something going on in the territory that is high risk. Yes, they are high risk, but there are a lot of other businesses too, Shayna, that remain open that is under the same level of risk. I don't want to get into that too deeply, but my concern is, how do businesses like those, how do they survive with their doors closed? How do they feed their families? Yeah. I know a lot of their employees need to feed their families as well. So is BVI CCHA at this time in any way petitioning the government, in conversation with the government as it relates to any form of compensation for these businesses while they remain closed?
So you are correct. Being closed completely now is definitely not the scenario we want for anybody, and we are looking into it. Our executive director, Mrs. Kiaya George, she's been having conversations tirelessly with the various persons that work with the Health Emergency Operating Center. So she's been asking the questions in terms of how is it measured in terms of who closes versus who doesn't, and a lot of it has to do with proximity to the customer and the duration of time and so forth. So I don't think we have anything conclusive yet to share, but we're definitely, in situations like those, looking at or having the conversations, I would say, and lobbying for, as soon as they can open, if there's measures that we could possibly recommend for consideration, whether they have an added layer of protocols that need to be implemented, that those are considered and, given opportunity to work and see how it goes. Because when they did finally open with the previous lockdown, it was a matter of them putting appointment systems in place. So you're limiting the size and the numbers of people within the workplace and those types of things. So we hope to get something definitive back soon, because I know it's, 2 weeks is a long time. And now we're going into another, I think another 2-week duration. So it's definitely something we're looking into and talking with the policymakers about it.
As we all know, the BVI CCHA is definitely the voice of the corporate community here in the territory. And I think those surveys were very significant in determining where their minds are at as it relates to the business community. Of course, we see a division continuing between employees and employers across the board as it relates to vaccination. But there was Shayna, of course, giving some insight. And of course, viewers, if you missed the exclusive interview earlier today, we discussed a lot more. You can go visit our 284 media page.
Well, turning to news, obviously continue with the BVI CCHA, but nearly 50% of member businesses who recently participated in a survey conducted by the BVI Chambers of Commerce and Hotel Association have said that they support requiring employee vaccination. But the BVI CCHA revealed those statistics in a recent publication, which has also said that 63% of members support vaccination, over 90% of member respondents favor the use of rapid testing, and almost 20% of respondents indicated that vaccines should be required for hospitality, tourism, and essential services employees. Well, according to the BVI CCHA, the stakeholders' stance on vaccinations was largely due to the negative impact of disruptions, which has so far significantly affected their businesses, where they believe that by vaccinating the employees, a safer and healthier work environment is created, which positively affects the continuation of business operations. Well, speaking on the aspect of this survey this morning with my colleague Javon was interim chairman of the BVI CCHA, Shayna Smith Archer. We'll take a listen.
For the most part, businesses really are pushing forward, and the recent conversation now around vaccination and the reasons behind of it, from being able to want to not have disruption in your businesses, that if let's say for example one employee becomes sick, that have to self-isolate all of your staff, and your business may have to close. And we have been seeing that. I mean, people have been seeing the notices that are sometimes issued saying, businesses closed for the week, or until next week, whatever the case is.
And a lot of businesses are in that position.
Yeah. So it's a difficult task now, especially for business owners, to think about. So how do we, again, protect the employees, protect your customers, and still do business?
Well, the BVI CCHA also revealed that they have received many questions and concerns from businesses who have been seeking ways forward on how to legally address health and safety concerns within their establishment. Well, Smith Archer said that to accurately address this matter, the Chambers has written to the Ministry of Labor and the Department of Labor and Workforce Development for clarity on the situation.
Thin line now that has come about, because I'm saying, I need to provide a healthy and safe workplace, but then there's the personal rights of your employees, and what does that mean from discrimination standpoint. So we're hearing constitutional conversations coming up, and it's really created a lot of tension that I'm sorry to see because of how it came about, so to speak. But it is something that we have, again, proactively started from time the questions were posed to us from as early as April, in terms of what does the labor code say about, vaccines as a requirement for employment. Are we allowed to do that? Or if we aren't, what can we do? Whether it's now having your employees test on a weekly basis, especially by industry, because you'll see in the survey where one of the questions was, should testing be done or required of employees in particular industries? And, we think automatically of tourism and all the hospitality businesses that we have that would be interfacing with travelers, or visitors coming into the country. And, if we're going to have necessarily, you have cases of COVID, that's kind of where it's going to enter through. It's going to enter across the borders through visitors. And, there's a possibility of spread if we don't, practice the protocols again and do what it is we have to do.
Well, the BVI CCHA is also appealing to the relevant government agencies to clarify any labor-related policies that may provide greater clarity regarding employer and employee rights.
Our viewers is still ahead of the break. Social activist Kishma Penn is being applauded for her efforts in feeding medical officials at the Dr. Yolanda Smith Hospital, particularly those who are serving in the COVID ward. And we also see Operation Protect Each Other being hailed a complete success, accounting for some 77% of the estimated 2,500 vaccinations last week. We have all the details right after the break.
The wait is over. CCT Fire is here. Experience ultra-fast downloads, seamless streaming, and even more reliable connectivity on an all-new fire-blazing super-fast CCT Fiber network. CCT Fire. Bring it home and upgrade today.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, since the advent of the recent surge, nurses at the COVID-19 ward at the Dr. Yolanda Smith Hospital have been working overtime and under immense pressure to care for patients infected with the virus. But of course, their efforts have not gone without notice. Social activist Kishma Penn and a few others are ensuring that nurses are fed while working on the front line. Now, viewers, we caught up with Kishma on the inspiration behind her initiative. Listen in.
As an asthmatic, I grew up in the hospital, and nurses played an integral role in my life in terms of helping to raise me, care for me, so they have a special place in my heart. So to know that they're going through this very tough time, they're not being paid the double time and a half hazard hours that they deserve. They're working 12-hour, 24-hour and sometimes 48-hour shifts. It was really disheartening to me. So just to sort of boost their morale and sort of encourage them to let them know that the community is still with them was like my main focus for doing it. But also too, because we just have this one hospital, and they fall, we fall. They're our first, I've been saying it all my lives, they're our first, last, and only line of defense against COVID. So I really just try my best where they're concerned.
Now, Kishma also relayed that the nurses had initially communicated to her the dire conditions that they are working under due to the overwhelming capacity at the ward and how that was negatively affecting their employee morale. This was the inspiration behind the project, Kishma said, and while she had initially intended to provide meals for just 2 days, the overwhelming public support has now made it possible for her to do it on a daily basis. Listen.
Okay, so the initiative goes like this. Basically, week before, the nurses reach out to me to let me to know, about their conditions, how they're working, the long hours, how the employee morale was very low. I'd done a lunch for them earlier in the year, New Year's Day, as a matter of fact, where it was sponsored by people in the community, and I did the cooking. So I said, in a way to sort of, raise their spirits and sort of keep them and let them to don't become too run down. I would try to reach out and do the same lunch again. And my plan was to cook lunch for them week before Friday, the Sunday, and last week Wednesday. But from my initial outreach, I got so much support in terms of money, in terms of raw ingredients, in terms of people coming to help, that I have been able to feed them every single day since then. And I now have a number of people cooking and helping me to do the cooking. Lots of people are showing up. Lots of people are donating. Lots of people are providing things. Lots of people are just showing them love and support.
Now, viewers, Kishma's efforts were highly commended by the acting CEO, Chief Executive Officer of BVI Health Services Authority, Ms. Cedarine Malone-Smith. She said, and I quote, "I would like to thank the community in a big way who has reached out to the BVI Health Services Authority in a very huge way in terms of trying to feed the staff and trying to keep them encouraged in that manner. Food brings comfort. We want to say thank you to everyone who has been feeding them. Ms. Kishma Penn has gone above and beyond during the day to bring in food." Mrs. Malone-Smith also thanked Capriccio, the governor, and other persons, and of course other entities who would have contributed as well. She also made an impassioned plea for residents to contact the BVI Health Services Authority if they are able to render any services to ease the pressure off of the nurses, especially since they are currently short-staffed. Mrs. Malone-Smith said, and I quote, "The staff has been working very hard. Staff have been out because they were either positive or exposed to positive people, but at least 75 out of the 168 are now back at work, so that is great." End of quote. Mrs. Malone-Smith also strongly implored persons to abide by all the health protocols in order to slow this very aggressive transmission of COVID-19 as recorded recently. Persons who would like to now support Kishma Penn in her meal drive can contact 284-340-4975. Of course, 284 Media continues to salute all of our health professionals who have been on the front line, not only working under immense pressure, but also risking their very own lives and that of their family to protect these Virgin Islands. Thank you so much.
And to our final story, we briefly touch on this story where the vaccination initiative entitled Operation Protect Each Other has received significant praise after amounting for approximately 77% of the nearly 2,500 vaccinations that occurred in the territory over an 8-day period. But these statistics were revealed by Premier Andrew Fahie, who made a disclosure during a recent COVID-19 update to the territory. Well, according to the Premier, some 2,498 persons received vaccines up until the press conference, which was held on Friday, July 23rd. But he said he expected that the number to increase as a number of updates were still outstanding from some of the other vaccination facilities. Well, viewers, obviously we are coming close to the end of our newscast, and so we cannot go to that clip that we originally had in mind. But the Premier also said that vaccination initiative has assisted the BVI government in getting closer to their vaccination target of getting between 75% to 80% of the population fully vaccinated to reach the goal of herd immunity. But that's all we have today that's all we have today, viewers, for today's newscast. I'm Kamal Haynes. Thank you for joining us.
And my name is Javon Wilson. Again, you can join us tomorrow, Wednesday, for another dose of 284 News. Take care.